How do you get into a restaurant that's booked all the time? Is there a right way to complain and a wrong way if something in a restaurant has gone awry? And what's the right way to tip and how much do you tip? These are the kind of things we're going to get into today. The do's and don'ts of restaurant behavior. Call it restaurant etiquette 101, the things that diners need to know to become better diners. With me today is my always well mannered co host,
Of course, I've been trained so well, George. This is Cheryl Bear.
or occasionally well mannered. Maybe
Right.
that was more accurate.
Exactly.
But today we're going to talk about these things. And I really think this is going to be an interesting segment because it's going to go beyond our usual go there, eat this, drink that. You're going to learn something today. But before we get into all that, we should mention that this episode of Arch Eats is sponsored by Opera Theater of St. Louis. We talked about learning something today, and you will learn something in our first segment called What I Can't Stop Thinking About. I'm going to start it off because I'm so darn excited about my ignorance. I can't believe
I'm not usually excited about my ignorance, so
you
I'm glad
laughed.
you're
So,
humble.
but what is crazy, there is a St. Louis food. I think I'm pretty well informed as far as dining
Just
and
a little
food
bit.
goes. But there's a St. Louis food that I've never heard about. And when I learned about it, I just couldn't believe it. And it's called St. Louis fried rice. Have you heard of this?
So I hadn't heard of it, but I've experienced it. I thought it was just a stylistic difference until you educated me over the
That's
weekend.
two of us have been living under this rock, apparently, not knowing what this St.
Right.
Louis food is.
This is our job. And we didn't know. So
Well,
we're,
here we go. So
yes.
let me tell you what it is. So it is the fried rice that we're used to in St. Louis, the dark mahogany colored rice
Mhm.
that comes from dark soy sauce, and it comes from a little oyster sauce, a little oil, and those are the differences. I mean, there's fried rice all over the country.
Sure.
You know, a lot of it's still white colored, a lot of it's yellow, it has different
Mhm.
spices, but the St. Louis style rice, and this is something that apparently is known all over the country, that St. Louis rice is different because of this. And I was just shocked to learn about this. I was talking to Mabel Suen, whose family has Chinese restaurants, and she said oftentimes they order it extra dark because they want a little more sauce,
Okay.
or a little extra oily because they want a little more oil. They want a little more sheen on that rice.
Well, then.
So I talked to Kui Tran, owner of Mine Lee, who said he's been doing this since their chop suey days back in
Wow.
the early 80s. That's how far back this goes. But it's a twice cooked rice, which I didn't ever realize. So what you do is you take the rice, you put it in a wok, and Kui adds molasses to it,
Oh.
then some dark soy sauce, then some spices, and then they put it away. Then they let those flavors marry for the night.
Oh, that sounds
The next day, they bring it back out when it's time to order, and that's at that point, you can put the bean sprouts in, and the scallions, and the shrimp, or beef, or chicken, or tofu, or whatever you want to, and at that point, you're cooking it again in the wok, you're smashing it down a little bit so you can get that crispness to it that is
wow.
only achieved by cooking it twice. That is St. Louis fried rice. Look for that mahogany color, and, you know, you find it all over town, and I think especially in the chop suey joints
Mhm,
and some
mhm.
of these kinda divey restaurants, it's really
Sure.
all over town, North City, South County, everywhere,
Yeah.
but, they don't specifically call it that, they just call it fried rice, but there are guys that have come in town specifically to review our fried rice because according to Kui and them, there's nothing like it anywhere in the country.
Wow.
How about that?
I'm so glad you pointed this out to me because I spent my whole life thinking it was just varied from restaurant to restaurant. I thought maybe some people just put a little extra soy sauce in theirs. I didn't realize it was actually a stylistic thing.
It's a
So it
thing,
just
yeah.
blows my mind. I mean, I grew up eating this fried rice. So I grew up in Florissant. There's several places that serve this.
And this is from Florissant. This is from
Yes.
a place called China Peace, and this is a perfect example of the color and the sheen that you get. And again, this is a combination. It's got some shrimp and chicken and pork and all kinds of
Ooh.
things in there. But that is a perfect example of St. Louis fried rice. And when I was up there, I decided to double down and get another St. Louis item
Oh.
and get a St. Paul sandwich. So I had a
Yes.
double shot of St. Louis, and those are two dishes that most people don't even know about, this fried rice and the St. Paul sandwich. I'm just surprised that in all my years and your years that we haven't
Yes.
heard of this.
Yes. Well, I'm going to see your fried rice and I am going to raise you St. Louis style pizza. And in particular, a subgenre of St. Louis style pizza that I did not realize was a thing until someone brought it to my attention maybe about 10 years ago, we were sitting in a meeting and they said something about North County pizza. And I thought, North County pizza? What are you talking about? St. Louis style pizza? They said, no, North County pizza is a special subset of St. Louis
I've
style
never
pizza.
heard of this.
I hadn't heard of it either, but then I started paying attention. And
Maybe we should pay attention
I
more.
know, right? Maybe that's what it is. Our heads are in the clouds or who knows where. It's a distinct variation on the form. What I've noticed about North County Pizza and what they pointed out is that the pizza that they serve and the pizzerias around Florissant, Delwood, Ferguson, Jennings, really those old school places that I like to think were kind of some of the originators of the
And
form.
this comes from what we're eating today,
Yes,
came from one of them called Peroni's, and this
exactly.
is a prime example of exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's rectangle, whereas a lot of St. Louis style pizzas are round. It has a little bit firmer, I don't know if firm is the right word, but a more hefty crust. It's got great crunch to it. It's not dense, it's not heavy, but it's substantial, especially around the edges. It kind of poofs up around the edges, but it's ridiculously crisp. It's like a cracker when you crunch.
This one we ate was 40 minutes old, and it was as crunchy as it could
Crunchy
be.
as can be.
And you can see that the pizza crust has been rolled out thin. It's not a pre-made crust like a lot of
Yes.
St. Louis style pizzas
Yes.
are. I mean, this is the real deal. And that is a style. It's not Provel cheese because you can't call it Provel
Yeah.
because it's not an Emos product, but
Yeah.
it's like Provel and it's very similar to Provel. We just can't call it
Yeah, I
Provel.
think people refer to it on their menus as St. Louis pizza cheese
Right.
is what I've seen a lot.
And that's what it says on the 5-pound block. It
Yeah,
says pizza cheese or St. Louis pizza cheese, but they
exactly.
can't say Provel.
The other thing that really distinguishes it for me is that the sauce tends to be a little sweeter. It doesn't have herbs in it. You're not going to find oregano and those sorts of things that you'll traditionally find in a pizza sauce. It's very sweet. There's probably a decent amount of sugar in it, and it's vibrant red, like cherry red, and when it mixes with the cheese, it gets this almost orange goo. It's a lot darker, kind of like the fried rice is a little bit darker. It's a lot darker than what you'll see at a lot of typical St. Louis style places. It almost forms this, like, molten concoction of the cheese and the sauce mixed together, and I think it's my favorite places to look out for it. Peroni's, as we mentioned, Faraci's, which people are saying, how can it be North County Pizza? They're in Ellisville. Well, Faraci's started
Used to
in
be,
North County.
right?
I want to say Delwood. Nick and Elena's, Sarah's, which just suffered a fire. I'm not sure of the status of that restaurant. So those are some of the hot spots that you're going to find this. I think it's perfection of the form.
And one other thing that is somewhat unique to this style of pizza is if you notice, if the viewers can see this, but these are canned mushrooms, and this is the way that mushrooms used to be on pizzas for a long, long time, for decades.
Yes.
They'd come in those number 10 cans, and there was some blowback when everybody started putting fresh mushrooms on it. The old school St. Louisan said, "No, I want the canned mushrooms. It's got that certain springy texture and
Yes.
color, and you see it right here." And I hadn't had it in a while. I'm not a canned vegetable guy, but this is pretty good. I mean, I'm enjoying this pizza. You're turning up your nose.
Yeah, well, no, I'm with you. I think they're nostalgic. They serve a purpose.
There you go. There's 2 St. Louis things that we probably should have known about sooner, but we're presenting them today to everybody. And this is before we get into the do's and don'ts in the restaurant etiquette. This episode of Art Sheets is sponsored by Opera Theater of St. Louis, bringing world-class cultural experiences to your backyard with their 2026 festival season that runs May 23rd through June 28th. Don't miss the classic comedy The Pirates of Penzance, the Tony Award-winning musical The Light in the Piazza, the American opera A Streetcar Named Desire, and the legendary Romeo and Juliet. Join Opera Theater in lush gardens for picnics before each show and sip cocktails under the stars. That's a great experience. Tickets start at $25. Purchase your tickets today at experienceopera.org. This is kind of an extension of what we do on a weekly basis when we go into our micro rants and we kind of get down on various things and people and restaurants and what they do and what they don't do. But we're going to kind of tailor this toward the diner. These are going to be diner do's and don'ts. We came up with a list, and I think we came up with a list that we could probably, if this is etiquette 101, we could probably have 201 also. We might do that later, but let's just get right into it. Start with something. We didn't have any trouble putting this list together.
No, not at all. Well, you and I are both recovering servers, managers. You were a restaurant owner, so we all get this so deeply in our soul, but I think it's important for a lot of people. Now, this one falls into a little bit more of kind of a hack type do, and that would be do utilize Resi's waitlist feature in order to snag a place at one of those tough to get reservation spots. Places like Robin, places like Mainlander, Wright's Tavern, Louie, all of those places that are perpetually packed. I have had great luck putting my name on Resi's waitlist. You give it the date you want to go, you give it a window of time, and then you just hit notify. And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a notification.
And most of these reservation platforms have this function.
Yeah.
They go by different names. Notify Me,
Mhm, mhm.
Open Table does, I believe.
Yeah, I think Talk has
Talk
it as
does.
well, yeah.
So, no matter where you're making a reservation, you can give yourself a helping hand if you're willing to roll the dice and go with the last minute. And, if you do get that notification, you got to jump on it, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Yes.
But it's a great for people like us who don't make reservations, who don't make plans, and just kind of wing it. You've been successful most of the time with this.
I have had a lot of luck with it because a lot of people will make reservations the day that they are released. So, last day of the month, first day of the month, whenever a restaurant will do that. And what they'll do is they will make multiple reservations when they can, and then they decide when they want to go. They'll be dropping their duplicate reservations, and that's when you can snag them.
And kind of related is once you get to the restaurant, or this can happen and does happen, your party of 6 becomes a party of 4.
Yes.
You have to let the restaurant know that, because sometimes that's just not going to work. Sometimes all those tables of 4 are taken, or your party of 6 becomes a table of 8. That's even harder to do. And some people, oh, that's no problem. We'll just cram in around this table. No, restaurants don't let you do that, because you can't get served properly. You're going to sit there with your elbows in your neighbor's food. There's just certain things you have to do. You have to notify the restaurant if your size of your party is going to change up or down. That's just fair to everybody.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. This is a big restaurant do about notifying of the party size change. A lot of times you think, well, it's not that big of a deal if we go down in size. But if you're a table of 10 and all of a sudden you go down to a table of 5, sometimes they've put multiple tables together and it's taking up a server's entire section. So now you're only a group of 5. They could have sat that other table, separated it out, and then sat it, and they could be making an additional income.
Right.
So it's just super respectful of everyone involved.
And something else that's respectful is notify the restaurant if you're going to be late. And most restaurants give you a 15-minute grace period,
Mhm.
and then they're going to start getting upset and wonder where you are and possibly give your table away.
Yeah.
So you have to do that. You must do that, because you could end up SOL and not have a table. So you can and must notify a restaurant if you're going to be late. The problem is you call on the phone. A lot of the times they're not picking up the phone. So what do? You leave a message, but really just try every means possible.
Right.
Send a Facebook message, send something by Instagram, because chances are the restaurant's going to be following one of these things.
Mhm.
Really, if you at least make the effort, the restaurant will appreciate that and will try to accommodate you. But if you don't, you're on your own.
Well, George, I have another do. I feel like I'm reliving my past server trauma out on this episode, but one of my big restaurant do's is do tell your server everything you need at one time. Do not keep running them for one-off requests. Now, I completely understand if you asked for ketchup, they came back with the ketchup, and you're like, "Oh, shoot, I need another napkin as well. I'm
I
sorry about
remember
that."
those days. I was like, why are you running
Yes.
so much? They're one drinking me to death.
One drinking to death, exactly. So, as much as you can, minimize their trips. It's just so courteous to them. You know, if you need ketchup and a napkin and a straw, just go ahead and ask for it all at once. It saves so much time, so much energy.
A lot of these things are commonsensical. They're
Yes.
so simple, like, but it's amazing
Oh my
how much in the
gosh.
weeds a restaurant will get if you don't do it that way. These people are
Exactly.
just running around with like chickens with their head cut.
Yes, yes. So, George, you too have had so
Oh
much
yeah.
experience in the business. I'm sure you've got a few on your list as well.
Well, yeah, one of them is there is a certain method if you're going to send something back. If something's too salty or too spicy or overcooked or undercooked,
Mhm.
you owe it to the restaurant. They owe it to you to make it right. And there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with saying, hey, this isn't right. However, if the dish is cooked properly to their specifications, exactly the way it's supposed to
Mhm.
be, and you just ordered something that you don't care for, sorry, that is on you. It should be on
Yes.
you. That's not the restaurant's fault. And some people get all bent out of shape that, well, why didn't you make it right? Well, we didn't do anything wrong. So that can be a problem. And I
Yeah.
think part of it is this how and why is that happening? Well, a lot of it, I think, happened after COVID, and everybody sort of felt a little more entitled. And I think this
Yes.
is an extension of the entitled generation where I'm just going to keep trying things. This isn't a buffet. You can't just keep trying things
No,
till you find
no.
something you like. That's not how it works.
That's terrible.
Restaurants can't afford to do that anymore. I think in the 5, 6 years ago, it's like, hey, the customer's always right. We're going to let them do whatever they want. Restaurants can't afford this anymore, so they're starting to put their foot down. It's causing a little bit of friction.
Yeah. Well, I think they have every right to do that. I also think, as you were saying before, there is a way of sending your food back. We always joke about don't be a Karen. I feel so bad for all the very kind Karens in the world who've somehow become an avatar for terrible customers. But, politely, kindly, not aggressive, just politely ask. I have had many steaks, entrees, you name it, set back. I have no problem with that if you're nice to me.
And along those same lines, I think you owe it to restaurants to you don't have to complain about everything,
Mhm.
but they wanna know about everything. If it
Yes.
was too noisy or if it was too this or too that, this is what I do a lot is I will let them it's not worth calling somebody over
No.
at the time, but if you really want to affect change,
Mhm.
call the restaurant the next day and say,
Sure.
We were there last night and I just wanna tell you this." And you know what? Restaurant owners love that. And you know why? Because they never get enough feedback. When I was in the business, I just wished I could talk to everybody about their experience because the more you hear about that, the more you can take care of it.
Absolutely. And along those lines, give them the opportunity to fix a problem if there is one. Don't, this is a big restaurant, don't then not give them a chance to correct anything and then go air your grievances on Yelp.
Right.
That's just not fair to the restaurant. Everyone can make a mistake. Stuff can happen. Those reviews will stick with them for a very long time, and it can really hurt them.
Yeah, that's the problem. The first night Yelpers that go in there and just complain about everything, you know what? I don't think Yelp should allow it personally, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other issue. But yeah, you have to give these guys a break. And I think a 1-star review should really be seriously considered. I don't even know if I would ever do it, but people throw those out like it's no
Oh,
big deal. Those 1-star reviews are forever.
and I've seen one-star reviews about things like, "I couldn't get a reservation." I mean, what's a restaurant supposed to do about that? They're busy. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, those can be a very powerful weapon. I would just encourage people to maybe take a breath and think through before they do that.
Probably the most common question that I get is, "What should I be tipping?
Oh, this is
What's the
good.
temperature? What's the
Yeah.
vibe?" It changes so often,
Yes.
and you don't wanna be a tip schmuck, like I've always said. I'm sorry this is gonna stay with us for a while, whether you agree with tipping or whether you don't. It's part of the culture,
Mhm.
and, we just have to play the game for a while. What do you think? I mean, I still think that a 20% tip is appreciated. I think
Mhm.
if you tip 20% on a pre-tax amount, no, you're never gonna get a side eye from anybody. I think 25% is becoming a little
Mhm.
bit more the norm.
Mhm.
30%, I see that a lot, but it's not that common.
Mhm.
Where would you tell people to tip in 2026?
Yeah,
Just put you on the
I
spot.
love it. I'm usually around 25% total of the bill, including tax. I just look at the big number and just add it. Usually it's somewhere between that 20 and 25. I'll round up. I'll always give the benefit of the roundup to the server, and then exceptional service, of course, I'll be extremely generous with. But I would say if you're in that 2025, that's a good spot.
And I think, we're talking full service restaurants
Mhm.
here. We're not talking the guy that
Correct.
flips the tablet around and asks for
Yes.
25% for putting the bagel in the bag. I
Exactly.
don't think that's a whole other issue, but
Yes.
full service restaurants, where we are right now, 20 to 25% is where you should be. Like it or not, you were talking about politeness before, and I think it's paramount. I think it should start the minute you walk in the door.
Yes.
Instead of just going up and saying, "May he party of 4," just say, "Good evening. How y'all doing? It's may he party of 4." The
Yes.
nicer you are to the host and to everybody, the nicer they will treat you and the better time you'll have. It's common sense to me, but I'm surprised at how many people just there's like, what happened to civility? What happened to the please and thank yous? I'll do the hamburger. I'll do the strip steak. May I please have the strip steak
Yes.
medium rare? How about that? I just don't get it. There's no politeness anymore, and I think it's a shame.
I do too. And along those lines, one of my big don'ts is don't ignore your server. When they come up to the table, they're talking, they're going over the specials. You're talking.
That's a
Yes.
thankless task for the
Oh,
server anyway.
goodness
Don't make it
sakes.
any harder on them
Yes,
than
yes.
it has to be.
Whether it's you won't shut up at the table or you've joked about this, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to clink a wine glass or
Yeah, yeah, I wanna go from the next table over there and clink
yes.
the wine glass and go,
Yeah.
"Pay attention to the server,"
Yes. Or
and then we'll go sit down.
the big one is scrolling on the phone too. Your server's there, they come up, they ask what you would like, you're just totally in the zone and don't even hear it.
They're doing you a favor. They're telling you
Yes.
about the best things on the menu. You owe it to them to make some eye contact, get the
Yes.
phone down, and shut the heck up.
And you have another peeve about this that goes along.
Well, this happened to
Yes.
me a long time ago, but it's something I'll never forget. The same kind of thing. When you're staying a little bit too late at the table,
Yes.
and, there's
Yes.
a kind of an accepted window of time, and then you kind of especially if there's people waiting, it gets to be a little dicey, and I know this server that I remember that worked for me, he just walked right by the table and slapped a parking ticket down, and
Oh,
they said, "What is this?" I said, "It's a parking ticket," and he just left it at that, and they got the message, and they got up, and they weren't mad, they saw the humor in it, and I thought, I could get really mad and fire this guy, but I also gave him some style points for the creativity,
I
and
mean, true.
sometimes you've gotta kinda like, "Okay, that was pretty well done."
Yeah, yeah.
There's sometimes
Oh,
you have to
man.
give the server or the employee the benefit of the doubt and there's another one with a guy who called in sick, and I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "I sprained my ankle," and I said, "Well, how did you do that?" He said, "Well, I was on Lindell Boulevard in a tree watching the Pope go by in the Pope mobile." And I
Oh my
went, "You
gosh.
know what? I'll give you that one.
Fair
I'll
enough.
never hear this again, and I've never heard it before, and you just take as much time as you want."
Oh, that's
Wasn't that
great.
a great story? That
Yes, that is
sometimes
a
you
great
just have to
story.
cut the employee some slack. That was kind of a little sidebar note,
Yeah.
but I think worth it.
That's true. Oh, I love that. That's hilarious. Well, we talked about also minding your manners when people are ordering. That's another one that is related to kind of what we were talking about with politeness. It's if someone's talking about liver and onions and you just look in disgust, like, oh, I would never order that or not having that.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that, it's just, come
This
on.
isn't up for debate. It's like, "Hey, just let me get through my spiel, pal, and I'll go away, and then
Exactly.
you can harp on liver and onions for the rest of the night." But
Exactly.
let these poor people do their jobs. Let them do their thing, and then you got the whole night to talk to your people about how horrible liver and onions.
You have another one on your list that's about being courteous, but more being courteous in your personal space. The people who like to sprawl or you're trying to get behind them in a room and they're,
They're
you
sitting
know,
way back from the table,
oh
and
yeah.
like I've said before, you got your size 13 gunboats in the middle of the aisle, you're knocking over everybody that comes by. You have to mind your personal space. You have
Yes.
to be cognizant that it's a traffic way right here, especially when you're out on the sidewalk. I see that all the time,
Oh
people
my
walking
gosh.
dogs and riding bikes and jogging, and there's just all kinds of people stumbling and going down because everybody's just kind of making the whole space their own, and just own it. Own your little section of real estate and
Yes.
stay in your lane kind of thing.
I love it. Literally stay in the lane there. That's great. Well, we touched on this a little bit before with the parking ticket, but one of my biggest don'ts is don't camp out at your table, especially after hours. These restaurants, especially busy ones, they're really trying to turn these tables. They have reservations. They usually allot, I think it's like a party of two, a party of four. It's about an hour and a half, it's 2 hours. Party of six, it's like two,
Two and a
two
half.
plus,
Yeah.
exactly. So be mindful of that, especially look around the restaurant. Is
It's
it
as simple
busy?
it's as
Yes.
simple as that. If it's getting down to 3 tables, 2 tables, it's time to go. If you're the
Yes,
one last table, get the heck out of there. It's time
exactly.
to go.
I will never forget, we were already about 2 hours past being closed, and these 2 women, and they were just sipping on their water, and they pulled out a photo album, and it was just the kiss of death. They were going over, like, some
It's
big,
bad as
thick
home
photo.
movies.
I know. Oh my gosh, George. I'm still traumatized from this, but yeah, don't be that person.
And don't be that person that sits at the table with your phone on speaker and you conduct a conversation or let your kids do their gaming or whatever they're doing. I'm sorry, but that sound travels, and this is not the venue for that. If you have to take a phone call, get up from the table and excuse yourself. I see this all the time. I see it in grocery stores. Everybody's
Mhm.
just like, well, I'm the only one here and I own the world. And I
Yeah.
just don't get it. Be civil, be couth, just have some common
Right.
sense.
Right. I know. I feel like a lot of these are
I
common
know we
sense.
shouldn't even be saying half of these,
Yeah.
but we've seen it enough and it happens
Yes.
enough and you slap your head and go, "What are these people thinking?"
Exactly. Well, another one, this is just a helpful tip. This is just as helpful for the guest as it is for a server or the restaurant in general. And that's don't wait till the last minute before you inform someone you're splitting a check. Obviously, if stuff comes up or what have you, that's one thing. But it's so much more helpful to let them know in advance because it's quite easy in a system to just press seat 1, seat 2, and split a check.
It
Scree
didn't used to
It
be,
didn't used to
and
be.
now it is. They're taking the orders that way, they're keying them in that way,
Yes,
so it's really easy for them to do a separate check if they're notified in
exactly.
advance.
If you're notified, it just makes it go so much quicker, and what I've seen a lot is you'll be a party of 8, you'll inform them at the very last minute that you're splitting the check, and then you're wondering, "What's taking so long for our bills?" Well, maybe things got rung up on different seats, and you just have to double check for accuracy. If you know from the get-go, it's so much easier, and then along those lines, if you are splitting checks, don't get up and move seats because
Yeah,
that'll mess it
that's a
up
problem.
too.
Another thing kind of similar is don't tell the server you're ready to order when you're not ready to
Oh
order.
my
I mean, and
gosh.
I've been there, and we've all been in situations like that. And like this poor server, his eyes are getting big, and they're looking
You're
around.
tapping your foot, you're
Yeah,
like,
yes, like that guy wants this, and this guy wants that, and I really need to get out of here. And you're kind of a prisoner. It's like,
"You are."
okay, I can't move, and please make your decision so we can move along.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just so common, but it's a big deal for a server because they could be in 3 different places and should be. So
Yes.
so be mindful of their time.
I'm actually having a panic attack. I can feel that. It's so relatable there. Well, my last one is stacking plates. That is a big one that you've talked about as well. Stacking plates, putting everything here, dumping it there, scraping your plate. I just feel like that is not how it's supposed to be
It
done. You
it
have a strong opinion about
Well,
it.
I don't think it's the diner's job to do that. Stacking plates isn't a game. It's a no-no. You just shouldn't do it.
Yes.
Plates should be cleared one at a time. They have a certain method of clearing plates. Even though you're trying to help them, it's just not interpreted that way,
Yes.
especially by the manager on duty who sees that and goes, "Uh-oh, this server isn't doing his job."
Sure.
So you're making your server look bad by doing it. These are all small points, but I think at the end of the day, they all add up. And if you pay attention to all these things, I think everybody's going to have a better time.
I totally agree.
St. Louis Magazine has a new podcast. If you're wondering what's been shaping St. Louis, there's a podcast you have to check out. It's called Fast Forward STL. It's hosted by entrepreneur Keith Alper, who focuses on business, innovation, and the people building what's next across the St. Louis region. In each episode, local leaders dive into big ideas, real challenges, and growth strategies, delivering plenty of gee, I didn't know that moments along the way. New episodes drop every other Thursday. Follow Fast Forward STL wherever you get your podcasts. We'll link it in the show notes. Hey, we usually end with a micro rant, and I was going to say let's not do that today, but you You had something that we were talking about earlier, something I never even realized. This is a server thing.
Oh
Talk
my
about it.
gosh, George, how? How did you spend so long in the restaurant industry and not hear every single server complain about this at one point in time?
Let fly.
Hot tea.
What's the big deal?
Do not order hot tea. Never order hot tea.
Come on.
Don't be the hot tea
Why?
person. So I worked with a woman who once referred to hot tea as the 16-piece drink. Now, I don't know if it actually has 16 components to it, but it is close. I'll just tick through them really quick. Saucer, doily, cup, spoon, sugar caddy, saucer for tea urn, doily for tea urn itself, box of tea bags for the selection. Then, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot lemon. So I'm up to 10.
Hot
Okay.
water for tea urn.
Hot water for the tea. If you count that separately, that's 12, am I at? And sometimes they want honey. But the big problem is none of this stuff is ever where it's supposed to be, and none of it's ever stocked. So what happens is you are running around like a crazy person because you're out of spoons or you're out of saucers or you're out of a doily. There's too many variables to go wrong.
This is true. I
Oh
can
my
see this. Like, where's
gosh.
my server? Well, she's in the storeroom looking for sweet and low.
Yes, it is such a nightmare. I would say the only places where I find it acceptable to order hot tea are if you are at a coffee shop, because chances are they have it there. It's a major part of their offerings and it's right there easy. If you're at a restaurant where it's like a batch brewed situation, like a lot of times I'll go to, we've talked about Jinzen, for instance. I find a lot of Asian restaurants will have hot tea service, and that's just batch brewed. It's ready to go. Super great, super easy. That's fine. The one thing I will say, and you can leave with this, you never order hot tea on a patio. That is just cruel.
There's no way that patio is set up with all those things. You'll
Oh.
probably be running back in for 7 of those 15 components.
Yes.
I never have thought about that, but it's so true, and it's not
Yes.
hard to understand, and I get it, and that is where we're gonna end today. We're gonna end with Cheryl's micro rant about don't order hot
Yes.
tea. That's all from Arch Eats Best Dishes.
Thank you for listening to Arch Eats. Be sure to follow us and share with your friends. We put out new episodes every other week where you'll always see links in the show notes for everything you heard about today. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow along on Instagram at @STLewisMag and @GeorgeMahey and @CherylABear. If you loved what you heard, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And for more of the freshest coverage on the local restaurant and culinary scene, subscribe to our dining newsletters at stlmag.com/newsletters. Best dishes, and see you next time. Arch Eats is a production of St. Louis Magazine.